Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating intellectual quest, one that tackles a question that philosophers and theologians have wrestled with for centuries, right at the very heart of Islamic faith.
So let me just ask you this. How do you describe the indescribable? I mean, really think about it. How can our human, finite language ever hope to truly capture a being that is, by its very definition, infinite? It's a real head-scratcher, and this exact problem is the key to understanding Islamic creed.
Well, in Islam, there's a whole field dedicated to this question. It's called Aqidah. You can think of it as the theological DNA of the faith. It's the set of core beliefs about God, the universe, and reality that a Muslim holds. But it's not just a checklist. It's the entire framework for seeing the world.
And that brings us to the central puzzle that early Muslim thinkers were up against. The Quran, which is the sacred text of Islam, describes God using certain attributes. But here's the million-dollar question they faced. How are we supposed to understand these descriptions?
For example, you have this incredibly powerful verse that talks about the hand of God. Just that one phrase, hand of God, immediately opens up a huge theological can of worms. What does it actually mean?
And here, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, if you take it literally, you risk comparing God to created things, which is a major red line in Islamic theology. It's a concept called tashbih, and it's a big no-no. But if you just say it's a metaphor, then who decides what it means? Are you changing the text? This wasn't some minor academic quibble. This was a foundational, make-or-break challenge for the faith.
But you know, a big puzzle just attracts brilliant minds who want to solve it. And that's exactly what happened. This challenge gave rise to one of the most dynamic intellectual movements in Islamic history. Scholars developed this whole new science called Ilm al-Kalam, literally the science of discourse, to build a solid, rational framework for faith.
Now, this didn't all happen overnight. You can see the debates really started to heat up around the 9th century. And then, in the 10th century, our main characters enter the stage. Two intellectual giants in totally different parts of the world pop up at almost the exact same time to tackle this thing head-on.
First up, over in Iraq, we've got Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. He started a school that became legendary for using airtight logic and rational arguments to explain and defend the core beliefs of Islam.
And get this, at pretty much the same time, but way over in Central Asia, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi was doing the same thing. He was independently building a parallel system with the exact same goal, to perfectly blend revelation with reason. It's incredible, really. And these two guys, they would literally set the course for Sunni Islam for centuries to come.
Okay, so what was their secret? How did they pull this off? Well, it wasn't as simple as just picking a side, literal versus figurative. No, they were way more sophisticated. They built an entire intellectual toolkit to navigate the sacred text, and their whole method rested on a few ground rules. Rule number 1, 10Z. This means God is absolutely, utterly unique and unlike anything in creation, period. That's the non-negotiable baseline. Rule number 2, if but. You have to affirm the text exactly as it was revealed. You can't just pretend that word hand isn't there. And the real magic, the true genius of it all, was in that third step, finding a way to make both of these truths work together.
This led them to two primary tools in their toolkit. First, you've got ta'wil, which is basically a kind of figurative interpretation. Here, a scholar would assign a specific metaphorical meaning that actually fits God's majesty. So the hand of God could be interpreted as his power or his grace. Makes sense, right? Then there's the other tool, tafwif. And this one is all about intellectual humility. It's like saying, look, we affirm the word hand is there in the text, but what it really means, only God truly knows. What we do know for sure is that it is absolutely not a physical limb like ours.
So that first method, ta'wil, it really became the go-to strategy for both the Ash'ari and Maturidi schools. And why? Because it offered them a logical, consistent way to work through these tricky verses while always upholding that core principle of God's absolute transcendence.
But don't count out tafwith. It was still a totally valid and deeply respected approach, especially with the earlier generations of scholars.
And it's this beautiful reminder, really, that sometimes when you hit the absolute limit of what the human mind can grasp, the right move is to have faith and defer to divine knowledge. So what's the big picture result of all this intellectual heavy lifting? Well, this was so much more than an academic debate. What they created was a theological consensus, a framework that has defined mainstream Sunni Islam for over 1,000 years.
And I want you to just let this number sink in for a second. Over 90%. That is just staggering. The Ash'ari and Maturidi schools didn't just win an argument. They became the theological backbone for the overwhelming majority of Sunni Muslims, from the medieval world right up to our world today. And their influence? Oh, it's woven into the very fabric of Islamic civilization. We're talking about the state creed of massive empires like the Ottomans. It's the core curriculum taught at the world's oldest and most prestigious universities, like Al-Azhar in Cairo. It provides the foundation for jurists, for ethicists, even for the Sufi mystical orders. This is not some dusty historical artifact. It's a living, breathing tradition for hundreds of millions of people right now. So if there is one thing to take away from all this, let it be this. Islamic creed, or Aqidah, is not some static, simple list of rules. Not at all. It's a testament to a dynamic, rational, and incredibly deep intellectual tradition that built this amazing framework just to be able to think about the divine. And that's the real question I want to leave you with. How does an intellectual toolkit for thinking about God, one that's 1,000 years old, continue to shape not just personal faith, but modern identity, communities, and yes, even global politics today? Now that's something to think about.